Hi, I'm Nikki Woods, and today I am talking to Donna Davis, who is an author. She's a host and a master storyteller, having spent nearly 2 decades as a television news anchor and reporter. She loves to tell an intriguing tale, and that is certainly the truth when it comes to her book, Confessions of a Peppermint Pattie, Why I Really Am Black Enough Already, y'all. Did I say it right, or should you say it?
You said it right. You nailed the y'all. I love that.
Let me see how you do it, how the real Southern girls do it.
I would say Confessions of a Peppermint Pattie, Why I Really Am Black Enough Already, y'all. Like, y'all. You just got to feel that y'all.
You got to, okay, I got you. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you've spent quite a bit of time in news. You know, really have honed your skills, and you made a transition where you started helping other people tell those intriguing tales in addition to you continuing to tell your own. Tell me a little bit about you, and before we start talking about your new book.
Well, you know, I've always wanted to do things, and when people ask me, why did you get into journalism, the most honest answer is because I needed a college class that wasn't at 8 in the morning. I needed something that I could actually make it to class for. And I found a class that was an introduction to journalism, and it started at 11. I said, I think I can be in class by 11. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the language. I've always loved the language. I fell in love with influencing people through my words and my writing. And then, you know, broadcasting, you can just tell such beautiful stories with your words and your pictures. And I've spent my entire career doing that. And, you know, whether it's a woman who's been burned out of her house or somebody who did a random act of kindness, there's always a story to tell. And so I did that for the longest. And then I am not ashamed to say I got laid off when the economy tanked. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I thought, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to chase some dreams and do some things that I probably never would have had the courage to do. And so I just started writing, and it didn't come to me right away. It took a while, you know, for me to write to where I was comfortable sharing it to other people, even though I'd been a writer my whole life. But this was me not reading a news story. This was me sharing bits of myself, of my heart, my soul, my personality. And that's kind of how I got to the point where I wrote this book.
Now, the title is I would think, you know, controversial, and it might set some people on their dander, as my dad would like to say. I would probably say you're gonna have some people giving you the side eye.
Yep.
Why did you title it that? And are you getting that reaction?
You know what? It once you read the book. Once your listeners read the book, they will see that I have a quirky personality, and I pretty much say things that other people think that they're afraid to say. So I will say, number one, that it's honest and brave. But it came about quite innocently. What happened was I was writing this really deep book on spiritual enlightenment and, you know, going all up in my head and into the clouds trying to be the next Deepak Chopra, and I needed to take a break. So I walked to the living room, and my son and my husband were watching music videos. And I heard this music, and I was like, oh, my God, I feel the need to twerk. I'm going to twerk. And so I started trying to twerk. And my husband was like, he groaned. He literally groaned and said, I can't believe I married you. And my child was like, this is a disaster. You're burning my eyes. Please stop.
Right.
And I said, well, I don't know what I did wrong. I did it just like the woman on TV was doing it. And he says, what's wrong is you're not a real black person. You're too white. You're not even an Oreo anymore, which I've been called my entire life. Mm-hmm. You are now a freaking York Peppermint Pattie. And they both walked out and left me standing there by myself in the room. So that's how it originally, the title came to be. But then I thought, you know what, I can write about this because I have a lot of anecdotes and stories to tell. And basically, Nikki, the reason that I wrote this was because I was tired of people trying to invalidate me. Nobody wants to be invalidated. I identify myself as a black woman. When I walk down the street, when I look at the mirror, people see me and I see myself as a black woman. I can't run away from my blackness. I can't change it. I can't take it off, and I'm not trying to. So don't say because I don't do A, B, C, D, your PowerPoint set of rules, that I'm not black enough. And so that's why I titled it that. It's like, you know what? I am black enough. And President Obama even launched an initiative about this where, he went to different cities and he'd speak and he'd have his people speak at schools to tell young black people, particularly our young black men, don't let someone tell you that because you're reading a book instead of hanging out, that you're not black enough. And so I wanted to raise this whole discussion of what black enough is. So, yeah, I've got some people that want to give me the side eye, and I have gotten some heat for it. But then my favorite quote that someone, read a little more about the articles that were written and then read the book, she said, I wanted to give this the side eye, but then once I read it, I felt like it was my diary in actual publication. So
I think a lot of us, and especially in communications or education, I think a lot of us have gotten, and it was interesting, I was having a conversation, a girlfriend of mine, her daughter graduated from high school, and her family was there, and, we got into this heavy discussion about kind of race perceptions in America, kind of couched by all of the violence that has been happening in our cities, and we were talking about Chicago specifically because of all of the shootings and the killings and how little is being said about it in light of some other recent events. And my son was sitting on the couch, next to me, and he is 13, and one of the gentlemen in the room said, you know what? Your son is going to be called a nerd, and your son is going to be called this, and your son is going to be called that, but your son more than likely is still going to be alive at the end of the day. And I thought it was interesting how the tides have kind of turned, where before it was, you were not cool, you were this, you were that, you were straight, whatever. But now it's almost as if, to me, especially when it comes to black males, and I'm not including President Obama in this because that's just been another level of hate unlike any of I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But, parents are wanting their kids to not necessarily be the cool kids, not necessarily to be and I think that's really interesting.
Well, one thing my husband always says to my son is be a leader, not a follower. And so what I translate that into is do what is best for you and what is going to make you the most successful, not what everyone else thinks that you should do. And I think we have come to a place where, we're realizing that following the herd doesn't necessarily lead you to success. And so we have to think about it. And it's funny because, as I've mentioned before, when we were setting up this conversation, I'm a huge fan of the show. And they have a bit, it's a running bit that they do that I absolutely love. It cracks me up every time about the black IT guy, okay? So Jay is always talking about the black IT guy.
Yes.
It's hysterical. But if we look at that, there is the underlying assumption that if you deal with a black professional, you're dealing with someone who's less than, that we are less than. And that was another reason I wrote that book, because I want us to be able to change our thinking. I mean, Saturday Night Live just had a monologue by Louis C.K., and he was talking about if I'm in the hospital and an Indian or Chinese doctor comes in the room, hey, I'm good, and it gives them a feeling of confidence. So I just want us to start with ourselves and stop tearing each other down. Why do you have to tear me down? Because I'm simply trying to be the best person that I can be. And that was another motivation behind writing this book.
So another topic that has been in the news quite a bit, and you actually wrote an entire chapter about your thoughts on it, and that is the N-word. And the use of the
Nikki.
N-word. And the N-word not being Nikki, right?
Just thinking about it.
So tell us a little bit about what you do think about it and the use of it.
Okay, well, that chapter is, if I remember correctly, chapter 11, and it's called The One Word Peppermint Patties Won't Say. And I think I wrote a line saying that it's not necessarily the line that we won't say, but I wish, pray, and hope that we would stop saying it. I would like to see that word obliterated from the English language. It doesn't make a difference if you say it with an A on the end, or an ER. Either way, you have to remember, and this is, I'm 43, so I'm one generation removed from the civil rights movement, and I grew up in the South. And my mother and I lived in a house where we got robbed 2 times. So for my safety, she moved us out to a house in the country, and we were the first black people in that neighborhood. Well, the black people on the school bus now hated me because, I live in a white neighborhood, and they think that I'm better than them. It wasn't anything fancy, let me tell you. It was just a country, Tennessee neighborhood. But then the black people also, the white people also hated me because I wasn't one of them. And one day getting off the school bus, I heard this sound. You can tell when someone's coughing or something. I didn't realize until I'd gotten off the bus that this guy was pulling this phlegm up out of his throat, and he had actually spat on me, and he called me the N-word. And I walked in to school, and that disgusting wad of spit was hanging off of my jacket. So if people look at me and they say, I don't understand, I would say I understand more than you know. Mm-hmm. And my husband, we've been married now for 23 years. We got married very young in life, but we've always just worked together and worked to survive. And one night he was driving over to have dinner with me at my mother's house, and a car started following him, an unmarked car. So he thought it was road rage. Turns out the guy was an off-duty detective. And then these police cars start falling in line. And he calls me and he says, Donna, this guy is acting crazy on the road. Just come outside. I'm coming to the house. I'm not going to stop. So he totally did a slow-speed O.J. Simpson chase.
Right.
And I'm hearing sirens, and they're getting louder and louder. I'm like, what's going on? And this was before the age of cell phones. If I'd been cognizant enough, I would have pulled out our old, huge camcorder. But he pulls up in the yard, and there's at least half a dozen cop cars behind him. They drag him out of his truck and put a gun to his head. The whole time him saying, Donna, I didn't do anything. He needed me to know that he didn't do anything. And after all of this was over, I asked the police officer, I said, you're off duty. You're a homicide detective, number one. Why did you pull my husband over, or why did you start chasing him? Because I know he hasn't killed anybody. And he said, because I thought his car was stolen. And I said, well, that's funny, because it hasn't been reported stolen. So I understand the angst and the anger and the fear of the young men. When you talk about Trayvon Martin, when you talk about Michael Brown, when you talk about the situations that we're seeing in Baltimore and everything that's going on right now, we've been there. It's by the grace of God that officer didn't pull the trigger and blow my husband's head off. But I think that, I also make the point for my black people that we have to protest in a way that gets us respect, even if we're angry. I look back to the civil rights leaders. I mean, I've sat with John Lewis, and I've sat with Benjamin Hooks, and they carry themselves with a dignity that got them respect, which is ultimately what got them the results that they wanted. So I tend to be able to see both sides of the issue, but the N-word's got to go. And I know everyone's not going to agree with me on it. I think that it's a double standard when we get offended when a white person says it, but then we say it. White people don't understand that. They do not understand that. And I don't understand it either. Why would you use a word that carries so much hate and so much pain? People have bled, fought, and died over this word. So that's where I stand on that.
You also mentioned, Donna, before I let you go, the best Peppermint Pattie advice Oprah ever gave you. What was that?
Oh my. Okay, I'm not going to tell you all of it, but I'm going to tell you a little bit. Okay.
All right. Mhm.
She said, Donna, the best deterrent to racism is excellence. And that struck with me. I mean, you know, if I was to say it in my words, you just got to be so good that you can't be denied. And that's what she's done. I remember in the early days when she started out her show, people used to say, oh, she only hugs the white people. Oh, she only puts her arms around the white people, or this topic's too white. But you know what? She just decided to succeed, and look at where she is now. She's the queen, you know. She runs the world. So I always took that with me, and she's very wise. And I just want to say this, and I know that you'll probably have to cut this down a little bit, but I wrote this book in a way that I wanted white people and black people to enjoy. First of all, you're going to always win more flies with humor and with honey, as they say in the South. You're going to catch more flies with honey. But if we're going to have a dialogue about race in this country, you can't just preach to the choir. You have to have all sides at the table. And the white people that have read this book, that have then reached out to me on Twitter or my website, or, you know, however method they chose to reach out to me, they said, we left thinking. It made us think, and it enlightened us. And that was my goal. I don't want you to feel like you've been hit over the head with a hammer, because by and large, white people don't want to have a conversation about race. But they do feel like they've been hit over the head with a feather pillow. Right. And so as long as it left them, as long as it left them thinking, then I feel like I've done my job. And there's just, from my time, you know, in TV, there's just a lot of funny stories. I almost walked in on the rock naked one time. That was a funny story.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I know. I should have kept going. Why did I stop?
You can read all of these funny stories and be enlightened throughout the whole process. The book is called Confessions of a Peppermint Pattie, While I Really Am Black Enough Already, y'all, and it's by author Donna Davis, and you can download it now on Amazon.com.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
Me too.